Temelden Çatıya, Komünite ile Komünite için Konut oturumuna hoş geldiniz. Konut adında yazmıyor ama aslında derdimiz karşılanabilir, erişilebilir konut bu oturumda. Bir yerel eylem, local in action oturumu bu. Adına uygun olarak böyle erişilebilir konut meselesini sahadan uzmanlarla iyi uygulama örnekleri üzerinden konuşmak istiyoruz. Biraz daha teorik çerçevenin dışına çıkarak neler yapılıyor dünyada, ne gibi alternatif yaklaşımlar var, biraz bunu konuşacağız bugün. Konuşmacılarımızı tanıtmadan önce biraz şeyden bahsetmek istiyorum. Bugünkü oturumun ortağı ve aslında MARUF'un ortaklarından bir tanesi World Habitat Derneği. World Habitat Derneği herkesin güvenli konuta erişimini sağlamak derdi olan bir kurum ve özellikle topluluk temelli konut çözümlerini destekliyor. Bu doğrultuda verdiği World Habitat ödülleri de bu alandaki projelere hem destek sağlıyor hem de onları görünür kılıyor. Bugünkü iki konuğumuz da bu ödülleri kazanmış kurumların temsilcileri. Şimdi isterseniz öncelikle konuklarımızı tanıtayım. Sonrasında da ben dilimi değiştirip İngilizceye geçeceğim ve çeviriyle devam edeceğiz. İlk konuğumuz Geoffrey Payn. Nasıl kontrol edeceğim ben bunun sesini ya? Biraz bağırıyor gibiyim galiba, değil mi? Öyle mi? Tamam. Peki, Geoffrey mimar ve şehir plancısı. Özellikle konut ve kentsel gelişme alanında çalışıyor uzun yıllardır. Mesleğini icra eden bir uygulamacı, pratisyen. Aynı zamanda araştırmacı, aynı zamanda bir üniversite hocası ve yazar. Odağında genellikle gelişmekte olan ülkeler var ve 1970'lerden beri Türkiye, İran, Hindistan'da dahil olmak üzere pek çok ülkede konut ve kentsel gelişme meselesini çalışmış. 1995'ten itibaren de İngiltere merkezli Geoffrey Payn Associates'i kurarak çalışmalarını orada devam ettiriyor. Son kitabı Yaşayacak Bir Yer, Somewhere to Live 2022 yılında çıkmış ve konut ve kentsel gelişme meselesinin derinlemesine ele alıyor. Welcome Geoffrey. 22. 2022 yılında. İkinci konuğumuz Elisabet Ràfols. Barcelona'dan geliyor. Kendisi bir edebiyat çevirmeni. Fakat aynı zamanda bugün burada bulunma sebebi Barcelona merkezli Sostre Cívic konutunun bize aktarmak. O bu konutun da bir üyesi. Ardından sözü Thibault'a vereceğiz. Thibault Leroy. Brüksel'den geliyor. Bugün bize ayrıntılı olarak anlatacağı bir konut kooperatifi olan Komünite Land Trust Brüksel'in eş yöneticisi. Hukukçu ve şehir plancısı aynı zamanda. Ve konut alanında çalışan bir profesyonel olmanın ötesinde konut hakkını savunan bir aktivist de. Sözü çok uzatmadan sunumları için sözü konuklarımıza vereceğim. Dediğim gibi ben İngilizce ile devam edeceğim bundan sonra. 15'er dakikalık sunumların ardından sizlerin sorularıyla devam edeceğiz. Tekrar hoş geldiniz. So, welcome all. Let's start quickly and use our time efficiently, let's say. Please, Geoffrey.
Thank you very much. Thank you very much indeed, and it's great to be back in Turkey again. I first came here in the 1970s, and it's great to see a friend from the old days when I was first doing research here in the audience, Şule Özürek'in, and a chance to meet other many good friends. So thank you for that. What I want to talk about today is the issue of communities and the process of housing provision, housing development and urban planning. I think we need to put it into a broad context by saying that we are living at a time when urban populations are increasing, pressure on land is increasing, and prices are going up because of the neoliberal economic system under which most of us now live. And that has left a situation, or created a situation, in which over 1 billion people are now living in various types of non-formal, unofficially recognized housing, and that may well go up to 2 billion by 2030. that is still looking very likely. Slums are still growing faster than formal planned development. So although we are increasing the housing supply, formal housing supply, it's not increasing nearly rapidly enough. Now, one key area, the last region of the world to urbanize, is sub-Saharan Africa. And I was amazed to read a report recently that while half of the urban population currently live in various types of self-built, unofficially recognized housing, the additional urban population in the region is expected to be 800 million by 2050. Now that is the equivalent of the entire urban population of Canada, USA, Mexico, and Europe. And we've had 200 years to achieve that. They've got something like 27. So it's an enormous challenge, especially when you're starting from such a low base. The challenge has, however, not restricted to the global south. Even in the UK, the government has admitted that the housing market is broken. So we all need to learn a lot from each other about the role of how people can get affordable and decent housing. Now, I started my studies in Ankara in 1974 when I drove my students from London to Ankara to study the housing situation. And what you're looking at in this slide, in the lower part of the image, is what they used to call gecekondu. And this is housing built overnight or on weekends on public open land, which was outside the city area. And so people built their own houses and they built their own communities. And gradually, of course, as demand increased and people had more money, developers would come into an area and they would negotiate with the squatters, the occupants of the land, how many apartments do you need in order to surrender your land so I can build an apartment block like you see on the top of the slide. And these areas coexisted for many, many years. And the local government had no resources to cope with such an enormous demand. And so what they would allow is for they would simply subdivide the land as a plan and allow the developers, when the market required and when the market justified it, to go to the residents of an area where they thought they could make a profit, negotiate how many units the squatters wanted, and then make their profits on selling the remainder. And that's how the whole of Ankara was developed. In the 1970s, 2/3 of all housing in Ankara was built by communities. It was the highest proportion of any capital city in the world. And that's why I was so fascinated to be studying it. And it seems to me that that is a model that was working very well also in Peru, where my great friend and mentor, John Turner, who sadly died a month ago, he was the pioneer that my generation was inspired by to look at how community-led development could take place. He did studies in the 1960s in Peru, and he published many books, influential books, Housing by People. And that was the basis of looking at these issues in a constructive, positive way as a resource rather than as a problem. For anyone who wants to take the link to on the slide, his obituary, which I wrote for the Guardian newspaper, is now available online. And he was the pioneer, as I say, of this whole approach. But about 4 years ago, I was approached by UN Habitat to do a paper on the role of finance in improving access to affordable housing. And I thought, well, if you only look at the world through the lens of finance, you can only achieve affordability by subsidy. And if you're using a subsidy, you cannot prevent housing provided in that way being reintegrated into the market and eventually becoming unaffordable. So I modified the terms of reference and I looked at a number of non-market options by which housing could be provided by communities. And I list 3 different examples here. There's tax-based instruments available to governments. These are widely used, but are very difficult to actually allocate for housing itself. So that's not terribly effective, although it is a very effective means, especially in China, of generating local government revenues for all sorts of policy needs. The second option we looked at was fee-based instruments, and that is widely used, and that basically involves the sale of development rights. And then there's a number of options also, development-based options such as developer charges, I list them all here, land pooling or land readjustment, and land banking. These are various methods by which you can provide regulated housing by the state. But I also looked at a range of non-market options. And some of the more imaginative ones, in Germany, for example, students can live rent-free in homes for the elderly simply by providing 30 hours of care or company a month, which seems to be a very good way of keeping a sense of community and enabling both ends of the age spectrum to benefit. And we also talked about co-housing, we talked about cooperatives, obviously, which is a global phenomena, and a whole range of things like community land trusts, which have become much more widely applied in a number of countries recently. So I would strongly advocate that these non-market options be adopted more widely. And it seems to me that in addition to this, it's really important for governments to promote a diverse range of supply options, including, as I say, non-market options, in the same way that the people in Ankara and other cities in Lima and all around the world have been doing for decades. The trouble is that neoliberal economics has made these systems very, very ineffective. And you don't get gecekondu's, as far as I know now, in Ankara. You certainly don't get them in Istanbul, although they used to have, I think, apartment kondu, where a developer would build a block illegally. And I remember walking down one road once in Istanbul and asking if both sides of the road, because they looked the same, were both legal. And I was told, no, the one on the left is legal, the one on the right is semi-legal. And I said, what's the difference in price? And they said, 10%. Now that was 10 years ago, but it just shows how informal processes have been a very effective means of integrating low-income groups into an urban economy and into a land and housing market. And we seem to have lost that ability very much in recent decades. I think it's very important. I've also done a lot of research on regulatory frameworks. And I do find that in many countries, the legal requirement in something like the residential plot size may be set far too high or inappropriate for low-income groups. So we need regulatory frameworks of standards, norms, regulations, and procedures, all to reflect the needs of the people who need to benefit. At the moment, they tend to be defined by upper-income groups, professional groups, on the basis of their assessment of what is appropriate. And that really does need to change because that's part of the problem. I think we need, in other words, to learn from the poor because they're the experts in managing with limited resources. So all of these sort of options, I think, are very, very important. And we also need to recognize that community-led housing usually starts off with something very simple. Just a piece of land and maybe a one-room house. And then once you've got security, you expand and you improve, and that process can be endless. And of course, we've seen in Egypt, I was working there. That process was the major process by which everybody tended to get housing, and it generated self-financing urban development. So I think we need to focus particularly on those things that people cannot provide for themselves. If we can provide a framework within which local people can access a piece of land in any country, and I include my own country. Obviously, in somewhere like London, the land prices are far too high for individual housing. But wherever the idea and the option makes affordability on land agreeable and amenable to community action, I think that should be a part of the incremental community development process. So that would, I think, enable us to achieve that. This is the report I did for UN Habitat. It is available on free download. If you just Google UN Habitat, the role of land in achieving housing, you can download that free of charge. I did summarize all the work that I've been doing over the last 50 years in the book that was published a year ago called Somewhere to Live, and that draws on the experience of countries all over the world, including the UK, but it does look at the issues of affordability, criticizes the neoliberal agenda, and it sees what has been done and what is being done in order to achieve progress and live within the boundaries of the planetary constraints under which we are all going to have to live in the future. Thank you very much.
Yes, thank you, Geoffrey. Can you just...
Sure.
Yes. Thank you, Geoffrey. It's like, I think this presentation perfectly links with the theme of MARUF, resilience. As I was listening to you, I was remembering that, the importance of self-organizing capacity is quite crucial for resilient systems. So a system should be able to self-organize somehow in order to be, more resilient and survive crises. And this, stress on support supporting self-organizing capacity in housing is, pretty much related to building resilient communities, let's say, through, not, let's say, informal housing, but, self-organizing, as you said, community-led housing. And just one short addition, gpa.org.uk, right? It's an, I would say, very cozy and very informative web page on Geoffrey Payn. And yes, Elisabet, please, let's proceed with you. Elisabet'in sunumunu, yes.
I can say I'm not expert in managing this. I'm no expert urban planner, but I am an expert on grassroots movement, let's say. So I'm a member of this cooperative, Sostre Cívic. Sostre Cívic is made of 12,000 people. We are 1,200 people, not 12,000, 1,200 people. And our mission is to provide housing that, in a cooperative way, that we want to take out of the speculative market. So it's an alternative to the system as it is now. Okay, one moment. I'm gonna try it. So this organization started in 2004. And it's not until 2016 that we had the first cooperative housing functioning. So that means many years of groundbreaking or of finding ways of making it possible. At this particular moment, we are 1,200 members plus. We are present in 27 cities in the region of Catalonia. So the headquarters of this cooperative is in Barcelona, but there are projects all scattered in the Catalan territory. Then we have 14 groups that are just starting. So there is no land, there is just the people. And then we have 11 projects with people already co-living. And then 13 projects self-developing. That means that the land is there, maybe now they are working on the architectural project, maybe there was an old building that we want to renovate, so people are not living there, but we have something concrete. So, so here you have very visually how it all started. And then in 2016, remember the organization started in 2004 just as an association, and then it became a cooperative. And then in 2016, we have one house, one building in functioning, and 3 on the way. And so we get to 2023, and we have 11 working with people already living in there, and 13 more that are on their way. So here you have this map that is like all these red dots are not very exact, it's all very approximate, but what's important is like those, like Sostre Cívic has 24 projects, and that means 547 dwellings. So, and in the whole of Catalonia, these are not they are not actualized information, but it's close to that. 30 in the total of Catalonia, so that means other cooperatives that are not members of Sostre Cívic that also have projects working, and which means 550 dwellings. So it all started because housing in Spain is a right that's not guaranteed, and then there is a lot of private property. There is social housing stock is only 2.5%, and the rent-to-income ratio is in Catalonia 57%, and in Spain 40%. So that's the context in which this association saw the need for creating a space that is non-speculative, especially in Barcelona, where it's a very touristic city, like Istanbul is, and so Airbnb and all the foreign investors and all the greedy investors that want to make a profit with, regardless of people. So that is the system, that's how it works. So we have the people, the members of Sostre Cívic, of the cooperative, and then is the cooperative who is the owner of the property, of the project, and the people that get the right to use this property to the end of their days or until they want to. So then that's another visual way of explaining. When you purchase, you have to put all this money up front. When you rent, you put some money every month, but that will increase. And with no rent control as it is right now, like I don't know how it is here, but in Barcelona right now at the most you'll get 5-year contract. And that means after 5 years you get an increase, who knows how much. Whereas the right to use, it means that you might put some money up front that will be returned to you the day you die or the day you leave. And then the amount of money that you pay every month for the maintenance, for paying mortgages or whatever, that stays always the same and maybe decreases as payments, for example, of a mortgage, if you do have that, finish. So that's so instead of having a cooperative, every project being a cooperative, everyone is independent. No, in how it works with Sostre Cívic is that all the projects, all the properties belong to Sostre Cívic. They are independent financially, so if one fails for economically, that doesn't affect the other projects. But let's say that who owns all the properties is Sostre Cívic. So Sostre Cívic, what provides is it facilitates the project, and the fact that there is already one is very easy to then replicate with other projects that will come along. And then there is a network of people all helping each other, and then the fact that it's always, the affordability is maintained. Then it's an organization that's assembly-led. This is how the organization of the cooperative works, and the only change that there is from this one is that the technical team, it also belongs to the, I cannot read from here, with the board, with the director. Yeah. Okay, and that's everyone then of the projects will have also their own assembly, their own committees, like the big one. So, general information about the forecast. So right now we said we have a total of 24 projects, which means 547 dwellings, and our forecast is that there will be 30 projects in 2025 with 635 dwellings. That if things go at the same rhythm. Social housing, so that's a percentage of what is protected dwellings, protected buildings, protected housing, and the one that is not. And then the type of land, then we have public land and private land, so that means, and that will make different conditions for the cooperative. If one cooperative gets land given by the municipality will have some conditions to give. For example, that it has to have a certain percentage of protected housing, etc. No, those are details. I'm running out of time. So another thing that's interesting was this right of the first refusal or preemptive right. That means that if there is public land, if there is land that is, or a building that belongs to how does it work? Okay, that we are, the Sostre Cívic has the right of first refusal to get a property from the public land or in front of other buyers. Just because we are a cooperative, and so that's some of the struggle that we have been doing in Catalonia for getting more availability of land and financing. All of the finances made through the Banca Ética, the ethic banks. So here a summary of the principles and values of Sostre Cívic. So, non-profit and social economy, affordability, self-management, empowerment, sustainability, and the right in housing and socials. Okay, this is very interesting. It's La Constructiva. It's a non-profit company, that will build all the projects for Sostre Cívic, and it's a way of keeping the prices low, and also it is part of our network and social commitment to better housing. Then there are also projects that are only for youth, there are projects that are only for elderly people, and then they all self-manage their project. Then there is the cooperative with the public, which is grant to use public land or property during 75 of 99 years. So that's, then there are government grants and loans that's also something that has been obtained by the struggle of the association. And then there is also through private property acquisition that one can get. Then just here showing that networking for us is really important in the financing world, in the construction work, in the social justice. And here just a few examples. That is the first building that became a cooperative. That's in the real center of Barcelona, in a very touristic area. That's a new building built from scratch and on public land, also in Barcelona. This one is also another neighborhood in Barcelona and also coming from public land. And also to mention that sustainability of the building is also very important for all of them. This one is also, it's a town like, let's say, 60 kilometers from Barcelona that has just started. There's another in Girona, another project. This one is very interesting. This one is like a farm that was bought by these people, and they are all living there more or less communally. Everyone has their own room, but they manage, like the kitchen and all of that, and the land. They have a lot of land and forest and everything, so that's special in that way. And then this one is for elderly people, and they are not yet living there. And this is another one that's for elderly people, both out of Barcelona, these two. And that is all. Thank you.
Thank you, Elisabet. An excellent time use, and still we have 1.5 minutes. May I ask a question, just to use this time? If you know, can you tell us a bit more on how a project is formed? Do just people come together and say, hey, come and form a project or something? Yeah.
How we start the project?
Yes.
Well, it can be just a group of people that they get together and say, okay, we want to start a project. So we go to Sostre Cívic and or maybe, like, for example, myself, I don't belong to any building project, but I'm interested and I believe in the values of Sostre Cívic, so I joined. And then I find some people with whom I would like to start a project, and then we create everything from there with the support of Sostre Cívic, so we can get help to how to set this up, how to find the land, how to find properties. But it's all our work. And then also they will help us out with the construction if there is a building to do, and they will help us out to set up mortgages or things like this. But also, as a member, I have the possibility of joining a project that already has started, and they are already living there, but all of a sudden there is what we call a vacancy. No, somebody has died, or more likely, I don't know, somebody has left, and then there is an opportunity for someone, for a member of Sostre Cívic.
Thank you.
Yeah.
Yes, and our last speaker, Thibault, floor is yours.
Hello. Yeah, very pleased to meet you today in Istanbul. It's my first time in Istanbul, so I hope to bring many friends, as did Peter, Geoffrey. So I am the director of the Community Land Trust Brussels. So I would like to introduce you to the work of my colleagues and me at Community Land Trust Brussels. This is a non-profit organization that offers, or tries to offer, affordable housing solution for people with low income in Brussels. So our roots are deeply rooted in the right for housing solutions in Brussels. So a short highlight to the Brussels context. Like many cities, Brussels faced what we call a housing crisis, but it's not a crisis anymore since it's like 30 years that it is happening. But the housing prices doubled between the years 2000 and 2010. In Brussels, the social housing represents only, let's say, 7% of the housing stock. So compared to Turkey, maybe it's not very representative, but compared to the neighboring countries of Belgium, it's very low. It represents in Brussels, let's say, 40,000 units of social housing, but there are more than 25% of the population of Brussels who lives below the poverty line. So there should be at least 90 to 100,000 units. So there is a lack of social housing in Brussels. There are 45,000 people waiting on the waiting list for social housing. So there are really in need for housing, it's more and more difficult for people to rent a home, a decent home in Brussels. So the solution for these people and these families is to live in substandard, low-quality houses that are quite expensive compared to their income, or to leave the city. And the situation will be worse in a few years because 120,000 new inhabitants are waited for Brussels by 2025. Besides of that, the existing home ownership schemes in Belgium, most of the focus of the public authorities has been put on the home ownership programs, but they are not designed for low-income families. They are designed for the middle class. And so for low-income groups, low-income people, having a rental apartment in Brussels is more and more difficult, and buying an apartment is impossible. But a grassroots initiative emerged in 2008, and I would like to quote, I think it's Mark Twain, who said, they didn't know it was impossible, so they did it. And so these people, it's civil society associations, non-profit organizations that used to work in deprived neighborhoods of Brussels. They created a project called L'Espoir, which means hope in French. And the idea was to allow 14, so it's very small, it was 14 families, newcomers in Belgium, so 14 families from an immigrant background, to become homeowner. And to achieve that, what they did is they collected a lot of grants, of gifts, of help for foundation and for the public authorities, and they managed to do it. They allowed these people to buy their own home. That was a very big success, this operation, because the home ownership provides to all these families, first of all, the residential security. It's very important for people who got some very difficult residential journey, the security to say no one will never put you out of your apartment, you won't be displaced anymore, but also the opportunity to create some assets, because in a few years they can maybe sell the apartment and have money instead of being a tenant. Also some wealth, because they can pass the asset to their children, so that can really improve the wealth of the family, and at least some empowerment, because these people became actors of their own lives. They are not dependent of anyone now, they are their own homeowners. The challenge of that project was that many gifts and many public money has been injected for only 14 families, and in a few years, maybe in 10, 20, 30 years, if these families sell the home, they will sell it at the market price, and everything will have to start again, because they will sell it at a very high price. Low-income families cannot buy that, and so we didn't help anyone but these 14 families. But at the same moment, the non-profit organization and the civil society in Brussels discovered a model called the Community Land Trust model. At that time, the Champlain Housing Trust from Burlington in the Vermont in the United States has been rewarded by the World Habitat Award. And they presented the model in Lyon, and the people in Brussels were very interested, and they pay a visit to the Champlain Housing Trust over there, and they discovered that that model could provide the permanent affordability that we're looking for. The land is considered as a common, and the housing trust tries to create a community. That was the start of our project in Brussels. So the idea is that the CLT model limits the resale price. So the Community Land Trust, a non-profit organization, can sell homes to people for a low price, and the condition is that when these people want to sell back the homes, they have to accept some regulation on the price to keep the house affordable for the next generation of buyers. In Belgium, you have to know that home ownership is an absolute right. You can never restrict it, and any restriction to this right must be proportionate for general interest and temporary for a limited time. And we used to consider that 20 years to 30 years is a good limit, but afterwards, everyone can do anything. You cannot restrict the right of property. But with the CLT model, we are not in a pure home ownership program. We are in what we could call a long-term lease, because the land, the ground, belongs to the CLT, and the CLT offers to the family the possibility to become homeowners. So the home ownership is individual, but on a common land. So the land is collective, and that changes a lot. On a symbolic point of view, that changes things, but also on a very pragmatical point of view, that allows the non-profit organization, the CLT, to say, okay, you are the homeowner, but in 15 years, 20 years, 50 years from now, when you want to sell your house, you have to accept some limitation of the resale price. And that is very important because that avoids the real estate speculation, but also the land speculation. And last but not least, the CLT consider the land as a common good. This is very important for Brussels, but the model has been developed in the United States, is deeply rooted in the civil rights movement in the US. But for Brussels, the idea is very important because Brussels is a city that is really defined by its borders. Brussels will never be able to expand its territory because due to the Belgian federalism, the region is limited. So considering the land as a common good is a very good solution because otherwise, due to the supply and demand law, the prices of the lands will always go higher year after year just because many people want to live in a single city. So the fact that the land is a common good and that the CLT is democratically managed by the inhabitants is very important also for us. So I wanted to give a short highlight just to show that it takes time to create a community land trust. So the CLT Brussels has been created in 2012 after that the public authority asked for a feasibility study. In 2013, we bought our first project that had to be renewed and refurbished. And in 2015, the first residents arrived in our project. Today, we have, I will say it in a few moments, but today we have 100 residents. So in 15 years, we did it, but it takes a lot of time. But you should not be discouraged because I like to use the metaphor of the apple tree. If you want to have apple in your apple tree, you should have planted it 20 years ago. But if you didn't do it 20 years ago, do it now. The second best time to do it is now, so just start it and you will see it will work. I also wanted to set some perspective in 2023 of the CLT model. We are discussing about creating a European CLT network. I think the official creation will be October the 20th, so in a few weeks. And we try to disseminate the model, and we also try to create some housing cooperative in Brussels. So I'm very glad to be here with Sostre Cívic. So we went from the woods to the roofs because our first job is to create housing. So now we have more than 100 houses, housing units that are inhabited. We used to say that it's not just about the house, it's not just about the land, the job we do is about the people. So maybe we'll take a closer look to the people that live in our apartments. It's always people with low income. So in Brussels, different CLTs have different policies, but in Brussels, we do social housing. We have today 500 inhabitants among 100 housing units. We have a lot of applicant homeowners, people who want to buy a house as soon as possible. And 80% of them are from the lowest income category. So in the social housing category in Brussels, there are some people that have a job, but they are like single family, single parent family. And so they don't have a lot of money, but there are also people with really, really low money because they don't have any job, they don't work, they are on aid care and so on. Most of our applicants are from this category. And we have a very large diversity in origin. Brussels is a very multicultural city, and in our inhabitants, you can see that because there are really many people from Latin America, from southern part of Africa, from northern part of Africa, from Europe. and so on. One very important aspect of our job is the community job. So in CLT, the Community Land Trust model, C is for community, and we think that really the CLTB is much more than housing. We need to create a community. So how do we do that? First, and it's important to say it, our residents and the neighbors are involved in our organization. All the residents are members of our General Assembly, and they are by far the biggest population of our General Assembly, so they can really decide these are the people who rule our job. They can also, and they also elect people in our board of directors, and in our board of directors, as I said in the previous slide, there are 1/3 of the people are inhabitants, 1/3 are elected by the government, and 1/3 of the people are civil society people. So they are deeply involved in what we do, but they are also involved in the future project that we are creating, because we ask representatives of the inhabitants and the residents to participate, to take part in the design of housing projects. So they have a dialogue with the architects, they come to see the project under construction, and so on. So during the project, we support the inhabitants with the help of some other non-profit organizations to allow them to become the best homeowner possible, to inform them of how it works to live in a, let's say, low energy building, to live together, to be co-owner. And after the project, most of the people have not the experience of living as a co-owner of a building, and so to have to take decisions about the co-ownership, so we help them to do that. But we also have a methodology called the asset-based community development, and we really think that it's important to give the community a place, not only the residents, but also the neighbors. And so we used to take very long discussions with all the neighboring communities and the residents of our projects to know what they can do, what are the assets, what are the skills, and to know, could you try to develop these skills and to help you new neighbors. And so we will try to create some community spaces. For example, we helped candidates, inhabitants to create their own catering program, and so now they started a kind of employment scheme. But we do also after-school programs, conversation table, flea market every first Sunday of the month, and we have a lot of activity going around the mobility, because mobility in Brussels is not so complicated as in Istanbul, but bicycling is really the best way to travel the city, and most of our residents do not know how to bicycle, so we give lessons and our inhabitants become the teachers. So we think that these kind of community activities are really important to help our projects to be accepted in the neighborhood and to be welcomed, and we can see that it really changes a lot compared to other social housing schemes, because we don't have the kind of NIMBY reaction, people not willing social housing in the neighborhood, that works very well in Brussels. Yeah, that's it.
Well, perhaps this is the first session where all speakers finished on time. Thank you so much. But also it's incredible to see how fast 1 hour passes. We have about 5-10 minutes, and I would like to give floor to our audience for questions. Evet lütfen. Mikrofon geliyor.
I would like to thank
Bir dakika.
all of you.
Tamam, İngilizce konuşacaksanız sorun yok. Sadece kulaklıkları takmaları için.
I'll try to ask it in English, although I wrote my question just to make sure that I don't miss anything. And thanks for all of you for your helpful presentations. I'm a PhD student who's working on social housing projects, and I am trying to offer a model for Turkey to have a social housing process which is covering all the income groups, especially lower income groups. And in our country, we just have private rental housing, and I cannot say that we have a proper social housing. which we see in many other countries, because as far as I know from my studies, social housing should be based on rental housing. So we are promoting the home ownership in our social housing policies. So we are lacking also housing organizations such as community land trusts, and many housing organizations in other countries are, we cannot see it in our country. So I would like to ask your opinions about where to start for social rental housing. And it could be, I think, giving some role to community, as Geoffrey mentioned, community-led housings. But I would love to have some suggestions from all of you to where to start to promote social rental housing in our country. And yeah, thanks. I was a bit nervous, sorry.
No problem. So a question addressed to all of our speakers, who is volunteer, let's say, to start.
Well, my experience is like the people are the ones who are starting the project, but that's very easy to say. So if you are asking a question like a grand scale, then I don't know, there is also a lot of work to do politically, you know, go to the municipalities, go to the main government, all of that, and work there for that to be implemented. But my point of view here is like at small scale we can also start, and if the politicians don't behave, then there is still a place for us to work towards it, because it's the power of, well, what they say, the power of the people. It is really true that it can work.
Yeah, I think the example of community land trust is a very, very good one, as you were saying, because it does take the land issue head on. And it's the land cost which is particularly making housing unaffordable, and the speculative pressure. So if you're trying to start a community group, look at the other groups which have been established in your context or in a nearby context, and contact them and see what lessons they can offer. I mean, there is a large literature, but literature doesn't get you very far when you're actually trying to start something. So I think go to those who have already made a start, like we're hearing in Catalonia. I know there were, I don't know how many there are now in Turkey that are cooperative groups. I know cooperatives exist, but as you were saying earlier, they're mainly the developer cooperatives, not the community cooperatives. And I think what's so important is that social housing in various forms can take a wide range of options. For example, if you think of Vienna, one of the most cultured cities in the world, famous for music and art, 50% of all housing in Vienna is various forms of social housing. 50%. In Germany, a large proportion of the housing is non-home ownership. Private rental is very affordable. So in other words, you need to start both at the bottom locally, and you need to start at the top. You need to pressure at the top for change that facilitates the community-led process. So it's, you know, John Turner was always being criticized by Marxist left-wing academics as being a liberal optimist. But he was not looking at power relations in terms of left or right wing. He was looking at them from top down or bottom up. And he used to advocate bottom up. And I think it needs both, to be honest. We need to work from creating the pressure within the regulatory environment to permit and promote social housing, and we need to work from the examples of those who have done it to see how we can build on that. Thank you.
Thank you. Thibault?
I think I cannot say anything way better, but I think the answer has to be multiple. I mean, social housing is a very difficult topic, And even if in countries or municipalities where we are working on it since years and years, we are losing actually. Everyone working on the social housing topic today, we are losing. The situation is going worse and worse every year. So there is no one single solution, but a lot of solutions could be made, and depending on the context of your locality, there are some solutions that can be done if you have a lot of money that you can invest, but there are also solutions that do not cost anything, like the regulatory aspects. It can be done really easily if you have some political courage in the municipality. That can be done, and that can really play a very important role, I guess. But yeah, the community land trust model is a model I believe deeply in, so I can only but encourage you to try to promote that here.
Yep, thank you. I can also add that World Habitat has a very informative web page where you can find a lot of examples from a lot of different places in the world. Iram, do we have time for one or two more questions? Okay. Yes, please.
It's not. Okay. Okay, it's working. So currently I'm working on a project for the development of a small village in Turkey, and I need to do a projection for the population after 25 years, so in 2050. The major point here is to provide a resilient housing solution for this small village. But the problem is that that village is restricted by land that used for olive, especially for olive trees and other farming, types of farming. So what could be a resilient solution to afford that housing for population without, intervening in that area, a restricted area? Because at the same time we have to think both about the people that need housing and about the nature as well. Thank you.
Will you address this question to someone? Well, a general and maybe a thesis-long question, I don't know what.
Simple suggestion, allow people who have housing to expand and increase maybe another floor or another floor so that they can make money and also provide housing. So in other words, you densify the existing village rather than expand it horizontally. Just a thought.
Just one more question. I think the presentations of the next sessions are starting to flow. So if you have one more question. I think we are done. We have exceeded our time. Thank you so much. It was so inspiring. And let me conclude, and then you follow up, and then we run away. Okay. Thank you. Yes, sure. Okay. It was so inspiring. Well, our aim was to show that actually, affordable housing shouldn't be provided only by the state. There are other alternatives, bottom-up alternatives, that can also include or can be driven by the community. Thank you very much for showing the case. The brochures for Sostre Cívic are there on the desk nearby the door, so you can take one, get into contact with Elisabet and our guests. If you want. Yes, so let's conclude. Thank you so much, and let's have your final comment as well.